What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the series. So we're going to continue with our messaging UI example, and we're going to add it to some tiles inside of our game. Specifically, some signs that are going to go in front of houses or entrances to levels or things like caves. We're going to keep adding things to the maps to make them more lifelike and eventually get that Pokemon game feel. So adding interactive signs and things like that is a good place to start. So let's go ahead and take care of that in this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you really like what you see, you can support the channel by buying a coffee. Okay guys, let's get into it. So in this video, we're going to take advantage of the tool decorator inside of Godot, where we can actually make our sign a single scene, and using a variable inside of that scene, when we switch it, we can actually have the sprite update in real time. I'm going to use that trick to make it easy for you to instantiate signs and switch them around, and then you can take that technique and apply it to other things too. For example, if you have a tree scene that's a single tree that has a special purpose, but you want to switch the style, I'm going to show you how I go about it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder inside of our resources, and that's going to be a textures folder. Inside of this, we're going to make some texture resources, and how we're going to do that is we're going to go to create new and then resource. And then here's a whole list of every resource that's available to you. The one we're looking for is called Atlas Texture, which is a child of Texture and Texture 2D. An Atlas Texture is similar to a 9-patch rect where you select the region that the texture comes from a tile map. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to go ahead and call this one sign_metal. And then we're going to do the same thing and create a resource, an Atlas texture, and we're going to call this sign_wood. And the reason I'm picking these two is I only really want to do 2 of them. I don't really want to go crazy, but by all means, you can do as many as you want, depending on the tile map or tile set that you used. But what we're going to do is click the first one, and inside this atlas, you'll see that it's empty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my tile sets, or sorry, my assets and my levels here, and I'm going to pass in my environment. And you can see the whole thing shows up here. So I'm going to edit the region, and I'm going to zoom in on my sign and hit close. And if I go and open up my, if I save it, you'll see that it updates here, and that's actually sign wood. So let's go ahead and go back and change that. And save it, and there we go. Now the wood shows up. So let's go ahead and open up the metal one and do the same thing. Drag in our environment, edit our region, look for our metal sign, and now our resources are up to date. Now that our resources are up to date, we're going to go ahead and make a new scene for our sign. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to a 2D scene. Actually, I'm going to click other node because I want a static body 2D because I want a collider on this. Since I'm not using a tile map, I'm just going to be inserting the sprite directly. I'm going to use a static body and a sprite 2D to do this. I'm going to rename this to sign. And you'll see this little error message comes up, and that's because we don't have our collision underneath. So let's go ahead and add our collision shape 2D. We're going to zoom in here, and we're going to make the shape a new rectangle shape. And we're going to put it inside our area. And similar to what we did with the entrances to new levels, I'm just going to go to the transform and set the scale to 0.9. And that's because when a player walks by it, I don't want them to collide with it when they're standing next to it. Only when they are looking at the space do I want the collision to be active. Go ahead and save your scene. I'm going to save this actually into the folder. I'm going to save this into scenes, levels, and I'm going to save it. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a sprite 2D. I'm going to go ahead and put a placeholder texture in here. It's going to be an Atlas texture, similar to what we did before. I'm going to go ahead and instead of actually creating one, I'm just going to load the metal sign that I already created. And I'm going to move it to this area right here. I'm going to save. And even though in my projects I set the import to be inherit, I'm just going to change it to nearest here. and save. I'll go back and look at that later. And now you can see that the sign is where it's supposed to be. So it's 16 by 16 and everything here looks good. So right now, if I went to my small town, I'm going to actually look for the tile map this is on and get rid of it. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new subgroup here. I'm going to call it signs. And underneath it, I'm going to instantiate my sign. And I'm going to put it, sorry, let me go here. I'm going to move my sign right here. So if I hit play, I should be able to collide with it. And you can see that there is a collision here, so I can't walk through the sign. So that's already working correctly. And that's because we only have conditional collisions with our tile map layer so far, and that's to check for entrances to certain places and to our spawn triggers. So let's go ahead and close that. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that actually because I don't want this version of my sign yet. And I'm going to go to my sign scene and I'm going to right click here and attach a script. So let's find a place for our script to live. That's going to be in scripts, gameplay levels. I'm going to call it sign. And let's go ahead and start working on some code. So let's go ahead and add this to our namespace, game.gameplay. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to throw the tool decorator on it. And the reason we're going to do this is because we want the ready function and our updating function to run in the editor as well as the game. What we're going to do is we're going to be checking to see that anytime we change the sign type, that it's going to automatically update the sprite for us in real time. So we're going to actually have to add an enum to our enums file. So let's go ahead and go do that first. And we can put it in this levels region down here. And we're going to do a public enum sign type. And so far we just have metal and wood. Like I said, if you're doing more than just these two, go right ahead, but I'm going to do these two for the sake of simplicity. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a public array of messages. And this array is going to be from Godot collections, not the standard C# one. Make sure you select the correct one. And this is just going to be called messages. This is going to hold the messages the sign will display anytime the user interacts with it. Next, I'm going to add a private sign type, and I'm just going to do underscore sign style. And I'm going to give this a default value of metal. And then I'm going to export a public sign type, which is going to be used to actually switch the private variable for us. I'm going to call it sign style as well. And this is going to have a getter function. And it's basically just going to return the private variable. And then a setter function. And basically what we're going to do, we're going to say if our sign style is not equal to the value, the sign style is going to be equal to the new value. And then right here, we're going to call a new function called update sprite. I'm going to go ahead and just put that here, and then we can create it below and come back to it. So that function is there now, so we can come back to it in a minute. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a private sprite 2D. And this is going to be the actual sprite 2D that we load from the file. And the reason why we're making it private is because I don't want to actually edit it in the editor. I want the editor to automatically update it for me whenever we switch the sign style. Next, what we're going to have is a private read-only dictionary. And this is also going to be from Godot collections. And this dictionary is going to be, the sign type is the key, and an atlas texture is going to be the value. We can just call it underscore textures, and then we could just define it here because this is never going to change. And this is where we load the resources from the file. So I'm going to type these out for you really fast. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to put the sign type And we'll start with the metal. And then how you call this is by calling gd.load. I don't remember the equivalent in GD script, but it would be something similar. And we're loading an atlas texture. And then you basically just give it the resource path, and that would be resources. You can copy this from the editor, but what it is resources, textures, sign underscore metal.trs. And it would be something similar for you as well. And then we go here and change this to wood. And whoops, I definitely typed that wrong. Sign metal, and okay, that looks good. And the next thing we're going to do is override our ready function. And here what we're going to do is make sure that if our sprite2d isn't initialized for some reason, we're going to do a get node sprite2d. Sprite2d is going to be the name because we didn't change it. And sorry, there's no space there. And then we're going to call update sprite as soon as this loads, so we don't have to wait. So now inside of the update sprite function, what we're going to do is we're going to check to make sure that the sprite isn't null. And if it isn't, we're going to try and change the value and go from there. So first we're going to check to make sure that our sprite2d isn't equal to null. If it is, what we're going to do is get our sprite2d, do get node or null. We shouldn't fall into this code block because of the ready function, but just in case, it's always good to have redundancy. And then if we still can't find it, go ahead and log an error message and return. You don't have to log a message, but I will just in case, log.error, sprite2d node not found, or something like that. If we get by that, what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if our textures try to get the value sign style. We're going to do an out var texture. So basically this is saying that if we have the texture, we're going to apply it. If not, don't do anything. And then similar here, you can do a logger.error. And you could say like no texture was found. And the other thing you could do here is you could set the texture to null, just so you know there is a problem. And then finally, the last function we're going to have in here is going to be our play message. And this is just for the interactivity with the player. This doesn't really matter for the tool section of this, but we're just going to put this function in now. And all this is going to do is call our message manager from the last video. And we're going to call play text. What text are we going to play? We're going to send in an array with a spread operator and just play our messages. So that's pretty much all we need for the sign. Let's go back to Godot and see if this works inside of the editor or if we get any crazy bugs. Go ahead and save your scene. And now inside the small town, if I go to my signs and I instantiate a child scene, and sorry, it keeps doing that. And if I pull the sign here, you'll see that it's metal. But if I rebuild the project here, you'll see that if I switch it to wood, it updates to wood. So that seems to be working pretty well. But now you see if I go back to metal, it disappears. So it looks like I might have done something wrong. So let's go ahead and hop in and see what the problem is. Just as I thought, I continue to misspell. I am terrible with the English language. My apologies. So now if we go back and save and rebuild, and if I select wood and then back to metal, you can see now it shows up just fine. So this works. So I'm going to add a couple signs here. I'm going to do this one wood. I'm going to call this Green's house. And I'm going to go through and add a couple signs here and just skip. But what I'm basically going to do is add a message for each. I'll show you this one just for fun. I'm going to add an element here for my string array and just say Green's house. And then I'm going to add a couple signs all over here, and we'll continue in a few seconds. And you can see here I've added 4 signs, and I've actually replaced some of the fence here because these have colliders as well, so they'll act like a barrier. So if I hit play, the sign should block us, but they still won't play any text for us. So you can see here I can't walk through them. But when I hit spacebar, nothing happens. Spacebar is going to be our use key. And if I go down here, nothing. So the next step is going to be to make these signs interactive. And in order to do that, we're going to have to edit our character movement script and update the way the collisions work. And if we detect certain things, maybe have a different reaction. So let's go see how that's going to work. So if we go back to our character movement script, inside of the isTargetOccupied, if you go down to the collider switch statement, we're going to add our sign class in here. This is basically just telling it that anytime you collide with this class, go ahead and just set that equal to true. We don't have to do any sort of check like we do with the tile map layer. We just want to make sure that this is a collision, and that's it. The second part of this actually is that we're going to want to abstract this piece of code right here, which actually gets the colliders for us. And the reason that we want to do that is because I want to use this method in a similar way when I want to check to see if the classes next to us have some sort of use for me. So when we put this piece of code into its own function, we can call that function and then have something similar to this inside of our player state, our Roam state. And that's going to be basically if I hit my use key, give me a similar switch case to this, and we'll see what happens. So let's go ahead and abstract this first and then get into that. So how we do this is we're going to create a new function, and I want this function to actually return me 2 variables like a tuple. In C# you can do it this way. I want to get a vector 2, and that's going to be my adjusted target position. And then the array is the actual array of points that we're going to be colliding with. We can call this get target colliders. And what this takes in is a vector 2 target position. And I'm not going to return anything just yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and paste it into here. And then the next thing I want to do is, because this target position is already the same as it was here, I don't really have to edit anything here. All I have to do is return what I need. And that is, I'm going to return first my adjusted target position. And then I'm going to return this, which is my intersection query. And then finally, down here in the isTargetOccupied, I'm going to redo this section, and I'm going to grab my adjusted target position and my result. And that is going to be from my function that I just created, which is my getTargetColliders. And I'm going to pass in my target position. So I'm going to save that. And whoops, forgot this little piece here. Okay, so that should be everything I need. So let's go back to the game and make sure that this works. If I hit play, once the game pops up, I'm just going to make sure my colliders still work and that I didn't break anything. So here you can hear I'm trying to walk through the signs and walk through the doors, and it looks like everything is working just fine. And let's see if the scene trigger still works. And it looks like we are still good to go. So now that we've abstracted that function, let's go ahead and add a new use case to our player roam state, or the free state, whatever you called it, where we can actually interact using our use key. So let's go to our player roam state, and you can see that we already have the character movement script in here, which is good. So all we really have to do is create one more function. So we could put our case in input, but I kind of want to separate everything out. I'm going to make a new function called get use input, and that's because this function will just strictly deal with our use key. You could change the names of these ones too if you want to be a little more clear, but let's just go ahead and work with this function for now. So we're going to make a public void get use input. And all we're going to check to do is to see if our input dot is action just released the use key. And the reason we're doing release is because I don't want to spam it when I'm holding it down, only when I let go. And now what we want to do here is grab that result again. We don't really care about the adjusted target position yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a variable. And we're going to grab the adjusted target position. I'm just going to leave this as an underscore for now because we don't need it. And this is going to be equal to our character movement. And we're going to do dot get target colliders. And we're going to do our character movement. And I believe it's dot target position. And then what you can do is you can do a similar copy and paste from your character movement. So let's grab this. We're just going to modify it a little bit. We're going to put this in here. I don't care about anything else inside of my collider except for the sign. And we don't want a return switch. We just want a regular switch case. So we're going to switch on our collider type. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make one case for the sign. So let's do case sign and break. And then right here, what we're going to do is we're going to call our sign's play message. So how we do that is we're going to cast our collider to the type of sign, and then we're going to do dot play message. So assuming that I haven't missed any pieces of code, when we start up the project, we should be able to interact with our sign. I'm also going to go to my game manager and just get rid of that little text we play in the beginning just to speed things up a little bit. So player realm state, looks like we're good to go. Let's go test. And when I hit play, if I walk up to a sign now, it should play the message. So here goes nothing. Purple's house. And when I hit space back again, it looks like I enter my state. This says Green's house. This is the text I put in. And let's go look at the sign right here. And it says, welcome to Covetown. That's pretty cool. And then there's one more sign over in the corner of the map. Zubat Cave, home to the world's largest indoor Zubat population. I don't know, I'm just trying to come up with some lore here. So there's one more thing you should notice, that it doesn't matter which way you look at the sign, you're going to be able to read it. If you want to do some sort of directional read, you can add that code yourself, but for now, just to keep it simple, I'm going to leave it that you can read the sign from any direction. Okay guys, thank you so much for tuning back in. In the next video, I think we're going to take a look at making some tall grass, which will help fill out our levels even more. Okay guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.